Welcome back. Today I'm going to take a look at a daily game that I played against one of you, my subscribers. As you can see from the graph on your screen, there were quite a few mistakes, blunders, and inaccuracies. I'm not going to go through every move of this game. I know I say that a lot, but here I'm going to primarily focus on where I lost the little bit of a lead that I had at the beginning, and then where my opponent lost their advantage and gave a big one to me apparently, and then where I gave it back. And as always, when we analyze one of these games, the plan is for me to learn something, and as a side benefit, hopefully some of you will get something out of this as well. If at any point in the video I say something like, oh, I don't understand why that's the case, why is that move bad, or something like that, and you understand it, please feel free to leave it in the comments. Even if you're not sure, just say, maybe it's this. I'll look into it and see it. Maybe that was it. And sometimes when I say that in the video, then 2 minutes later, I say, oh, now I understand why that was. And that's okay if you've already left your comment, but then I realize it later. I understand. I'll still appreciate it. This game was against Vedantbaj, which I have no idea if that's how to pronounce it or not, but he or she has never corrected me when I've looked at these games before. So I'm assuming it's pretty close, or as close as you would expect for an American. My opponent opened with e4 and I played the Caro-Kann in response to that. It looks like neither one of us made a mistake for a little while. I played as I very often do, and here black has a very slight advantage. I don't know if that's because the opponent's queen is already out in front, or if that's because that pawn is undefended in the center. I know black's a little bit behind on development, but maybe black has a little bit more space here because of these pawns. Again, I'm not 100% certain, but I'm pretty sure none of us have made a mistake here. There is a mistake here according to the game review by my opponent, and it looks like what I played in response was fine. We went on. That was a miss, but it doesn't give my opponent that huge of an advantage, just +1, so I'm not going to stop there. That's a great move. I moved out of check. I don't think I was supposed to come back and block because of the pawn. It's still +1 here. That looks like it was a mistake, but again, I don't have that big of an advantage. It's not even -1 yet. That was my best move. My opponent castles were still between +1 and -1. I challenged the queen. And right after this move, which it says was a mistake, but we're about even, my opponent blundered by playing a4. And this is, as far as I know, the biggest advantage that either one of us had in the game. And I was supposed to respond to that with a6, which I assume it's because the bishop is trapped. It has nowhere to go. They trapped in their own bishop by playing that move. So I think that's why that's a blunder. So I did play a6. That's one of my opponent's best moves. Okay, and now we've reached a point on the graph at which I gave the advantage back to my opponent. I thought that was a good move because it slows down my attempt to capture this bishop, because I'm pretty sure I have to deal with this attack on my queen. What should I have done about that? Should I have shoved my queen forward? No, from the move list, that's what it says that I did. I thought if I'm about to lose my queen, but I still want to take this bishop, I should play up here. I guess the problem with that is that when they take me, I either have to take with my pawn or my knight, and either way it looks like their bishop can escape then. If I play here and they take my queen, if I take with the pawn, then their bishop gets out. No, because my knight would still take it. If I took with the knight, their bishop would get out. Okay. But yeah, that is what I played, and that was not correct. Should I have just moved forward 1? Because then their bishop is still trapped. Or should I have moved over 1? I don't think I should have moved over 1 to c5 because they could have come after the queen again. No, if they had done that, I would have taken with the knight, and then the bishop would have been toast, I think. So yeah, maybe it's just one of these small queen moves here. I'm going to switch to the analysis board where the lines should show up. Oh, I have 5 lines showing now. It was, okay, only queen to d4 would have worked. Queen to c5 would not have worked because they could shove that d-pawn forward. But it says I would take with en passant, but then they could take with the bishop. Wait, I don't understand. If I did this and they played the d-pawn forward and I took with en passant, why would I do that? Because that lets the bishop out, right? If I moved my queen here and they played d4, wouldn't I just take it with my queen? And then my queen would be where the computer wanted it to be anyway? Okay, well, I did say d4, and that is my top move here. But again, I don't understand why this is bad. But let me just try this and see if d4 is indeed the top move. It looks like the only move. And then my best move would be taking it here. Definitely, it would be a blunder to take with the queen. And okay, that's because of this. Okay, but wouldn't my queen still have places to go and that bishop is still trapped? I'm not sure I understand. Let me just take this, and that would be a blunder because of this. And my best move would be to drop back to queen to d6, and then they would bring a rook over. Okay, and I assume it would be bad to come over here. That's not one of the top moves listed. What would my opponent have played if I went over here? Oh, bishop to c5 check. Oh, okay. Well, my opponent might have spotted that. Okay. But back to what did happen, which is when my opponent attacked my queen, I decided to go for the queen trade. That was a miss because my opponent can take the knight. My queen was the only thing defending the knight. Okay, well, perhaps I should have noticed that. For some reason, I thought when I went up here we would trade queens. I don't know why I thought this knight was safe. It might have been the thing that a lot of us do, which is when the knight is safe because it's protected by my queen here, then we just catalog that knight as a defended piece, and we often forget when we move a piece, it's not where it was anymore, which seems way too obvious, but I know a lot of us do it. I do it a lot. And now that I think about it, my move over here earlier when I was getting the queen out of that hypothetical scenario, that also would have undefended the knight, even if they didn't find the check here. But the bishop would have been in the way of them taking the knight, so they would have checked first, and then wherever I went, they could have picked up the knight for free. So, well, good job to my opponent for finding that attack. Of course, their bishop is still hanging. I assume it was I had assumed it was one of my better moves to take it. It was apparently not. What was my best move here? My best move was to play rook to c8, but they're very close. I don't think it should have been counted as inaccurate, but anyway, I didn't want to focus on every single move. I wanted to go to the next place at which my opponent gave the advantage back. It actually, okay, well, they brought it back to even here with that. Is that because I can block with my knight? No, blocking with my knight is what I did to give the advantage back to them. Should I have blocked with my queen? Yes, I should have blocked with my queen. Okay. I perhaps didn't even notice that that was a possibility here. Since I am currently still up a pawn, it wouldn't be good for them to trade queens. And I just realized that that queen would protect this pawn. If I block with the knight, they get to take that pawn. So I did block with the knight. They didn't take the pawn. They played that, which is a great move. I'm not sure why that's a great move other than taking the free pawn, which would have threatened my rook. But I do remember what I was thinking here. What I was thinking here is that because I had to move my king already, I can't castle. And it's in the way of my bishop, which would like to develop so that this rook could develop. Because that rook over there on the A file is unprotected right now, and it's kind of not looking great for it right now. And this is one of those situations that I think I've complained about in maybe some of my blitz or rapid videos where my opponent mounts an attack without developing their pieces first. In this case, my opponent has castled, which is a step ahead of me, and they have as many pieces off the back rank as I do. But what I prefer, if I have the chance in these situations, is to get my pieces developed, to get my king castled before I start attacking. But in this case, it looks like it was my among my opponent's best moves to bring these two in here. The problem, as I saw it, was I need to get my king out of the way of this bishop so that I can get the bishop out. And then I wanted to get the rook out so I could get my king back over here. That was kind of what I thought my plan was here, and that explains my next move, which was bringing this rook over. I guess I shouldn't have worried about the knight because my queen is currently protecting the knight. So maybe I should have left the rook there. Maybe I should have just dropped down one in order to get my bishop out, but then the queen wouldn't have been protecting the knight anymore. Maybe I would have had to go further with the bishop. But then, once I got the bishop out, I would have to put the king back up there so that the other rook could get out. So, I really don't know. I felt like the position was broken, and I do remember during the game thinking I might be lost here. The game review says I'm not lost, but I am definitely losing. So I did that, which was a mistake. My opponent apparently didn't take advantage of it. It was my best move to take back there. That was a mistake because of what I wanted to do anyway, which is to get my king out of the way of my dark squared bishop. Game review says that was a great move. We traded bishops here, and again here my idea was to move up so the the rook could come over and then my king could finally be castled. I didn't know it was this close here. Again, I thought I was kind of broken. I'm kind of behind here because I've got to do this complicated maneuver to get my king on the other side of that rook. But my opponent still has a very slight advantage. That didn't hurt it much. I made another mistake. And I don't remember exactly why I did that. I'm not sure what that accomplishes. If it had stayed there and I had just moved my king up, I think I would have been fine, right? Let's go back one. I'm curious. I know I said I wasn't going to look at every move, but yeah, I should have moved my king up here and they would have gone this way. It says, I don't know, but yeah, my best move was to move my king up. That was my plan. I'm not sure why I didn't do it. I don't remember. Stockfish has changed its mind. It says G5 is my best move now. That's because Stockfish knows that they want to put their queen there. I have no idea that they want to put their queen there, even after I saw Stockfish saying that, because I don't know what that would do. So yeah, if I had to play this over again, I would not play G5 or G6 or H6 or H5, which are all the other moves besides the king move. I would play the king move here, but I didn't at the time. I did that. My opponent is up +2, but here they made a mistake, and we know that from the cliff on the graph where it drops down. And I know from the move list that what they did is take this pawn. Now, at the time when they took the pawn, I thought it was a blunder, but it turned out they had a pretty good tactic in mind because of this spot right here, d6. Now, their idea, I'll just go ahead and tell you the game's over, and the move list is visible right there. They took that pawn, and I thought, oh, free queen, and I took it. But then they hopped their knight in here to d6, which is a check and an attack on my queen. It's a fork. Their idea, which was to take a pawn and then trade queens. But yeah, again, I thought that was a pretty brilliant tactic that my opponent came up with, and I have no idea why it gave me an advantage. What should they have done here? Let's see. It says they could have brought their queen back here to c3. That's one of their 2 top moves. The other one is rook a to c1, which I guess protects their queen, or queen to f4, which we talked about on the previous move, which Stockfish has a reason they want that queen on a4. I don't think that my opponent would have found that. I'm still in my head because I still remember the feeling that I had when I came back and checked on this game and saw that they had done that, and the elation of they just hung their queen. Of course, I felt bad for my opponent too because I didn't want the game to end on such a silly blunder. And then the next move, when I came back and saw that they had put their knight there and forked me, quite the opposite feeling of elation. I mean, I'd lost my queen and a pawn for a queen. So yeah, I have no idea why that put them behind. So when they did that, that gives me a -2 if I take the queen, which I did, and they checked me, and I moved out of check, the only legal move, and they took my queen, which was their best move. So, okay. So am I ahead because I can put my rook behind this knight and therefore behind this pawn because they then have to save the knight like here and then I push the pawn? Is that what it is? Because that's my only move that maintains this advantage and that's what I played. And their best move was to go here to immediately get the knight out of danger and attack the pawn at the same time. Obviously not over here because my knight's guarding that square. So they did find that move. And here I have 2 moves that maintain my advantage, which is bringing my other rook over to the open file so that I can finally castle my king, or pushing this pawn forward. Did I find one of those? I did. So I'm guessing the reason that gave me a -2 advantage is because I had this advanced pawn. And now that we've traded, maybe that was it. Maybe it was because of the queen trade. Because even though they picked up a pawn by trading queens, the attacking side should not trade queens, right? Most of the time. I know there's probably exceptions, but maybe that's why it was a mistake. And me as the defender, it was to my benefit to trade queens. And I have heard that before. Like I said, that's not what I thought happened here. At the time, I thought it was a free queen. But looking back at it retrospectively, maybe that's the reason that was a mistake. Because their attack has fizzled now. Well, I have control of the only completely open file. The semi-open file that they have here, it's just aimed at a protected pawn. My king is now safe. I think the reason that I moved this rook all the way over here wasn't just because it was an open file, it was because I saw this fork coming. I know that a move ago it said one of my best moves was to play b2, but I thought, what if I play b2 and then they check me? I guess it wouldn't have mattered. I could have just gotten out of check. If they took my rook, then I could have taken their rook and promoted. And then when they took back, then I would get their knight and I would be up a piece. I would just be up a knight at that point. But anyway, that's why I chose that instead of b2. I don't even know if I don't remember considering b2 for sure. My opponent had a couple of different moves here. One was getting in front of the pawn, which is probably what I would have done had I been my opponent. But they chose d4 instead. And now I have to play b2. I did. Okay, so how did I give away this advantage? My opponent played their best move, which was to get in front of the pawn. Now I'm up -3 here, but I saw that they had just jumped this pawn forward here. I wanted that one as close as possible for when things happen later. But because they had just played this d-pawn, it kind of looked like it was going to come one closer. And if it came one closer, obviously it would be aiming here. But I thought, what if I put my knight here and stop it from coming one closer? I wasn't sure what they would do after that, but then I could just put my knight in front of that pawn, and then that d-pawn would be stuck. And then, from there, I thought I could come up here and immediately attack that rook. So I did play knight to f6, which was my best move. My opponent played their absolute best move here, which was to get their king off the back rank. Since I don't have a queen or a dark squared bishop, it's going to be safe up there, and this diagonal's not a problem, so now their king is safe. Now the engine says my absolute best move is to play rook to c2 right now, which would keep me at -3. I guess I get that. It would be aiming at this pawn and protecting my past pawn there. Stockfish says if I played that, their best move would be to check me here on c6, which is a fork of my king and my rook, but then I would just bring that rook back from c2 and take their knight, and I would just be up a piece. I don't know that that's what they would have played had I played rook to c2. I don't know what my opponent's plan was here other than to keep pushing this pawn, but I don't know that they would have just put their knight on c6 so that I could take it. But I think I do understand why rook to c2 is good. I just don't know I don't know exactly what my plan would be down there, but I went ahead with the plan that I mentioned on the previous turn, which was to put this here, which gave away almost half of my advantage. My opponent's absolute best move was to put another attacker on that pawn. Rook to e2. They did not play that. They did not play any of those top 5 moves. They moved that rook out of the way. So now my advantage is -5, and I have several moves, looks like, that would have kept me there. One is knight to c3, which I guess would not only attack that rook that just moved, but also help protect the promotion square. Okay, I get that, and I'm pretty sure that was part of my original plan anyway. But what I saw here was these 2 pawns, and they can't move this a pawn. So I thought I could just put this rook up here and threaten it, and I could take that pawn. So that's what I did, and that was my second best move, so that's just fine. My opponent played rook to d2, which was to come after this pawn, and now I should have promoted, or played knight to c3. Okay, well, here's where that king moving off the back rank comes in handy, because what I chose to play was rook to c1. My idea, of course, was that if they took my rook, I would promote right there. But that turns out to be a miss, but I'm going to say that's a blunder, because I went from -5 to even. That's not a miss, that's a blunder. In hindsight, yeah, I probably should have promoted, because if they took it, I would get a rook for a pawn, and so I would just be up a piece instead of even on material. But the problem with this is that they don't have to take that rook. They can take the pawn. And that's what my opponent found. So good job to vedantbaj for finding that. That was a great move. And now I can take either one of those rooks. It doesn't matter, because whichever one of them I take, the other one's going to take my other rook. I chose to take this one because I saw that this one was protected. So that's what I did. The problem with that, of course, is this. Because now that rook's got 2 attackers on it, and I have to get my king out of check. So I got my king out of check, and they took that with the knight. It was my best move to take back. Was their best move to take back. And now we're very, very close to drawn. I played one of my better moves, getting behind their passed pawn. They played one of their top moves, putting me in check. The engine says I should have gone this way. Oh, I guess to hide behind the pawns. I thought, hey, I can go for that pawn, so that's what I did. And yeah, definitely the reason I should have gone that way was to protect these pawns, because here my opponent's best move is to drop down one and try to take these pawns, but instead they went up there to continue protecting their a pawn, because of course I was about to take it, and because that keeps me from taking the d pawn that I just went after. But now we can't move either one of those pawns. They can't move the a pawn, because then I would take it with my rook, and they can't move the d pawn because my king's in front of it. So what do we play? Well, I played one of my top moves, which was because I did see that these were vulnerable, all they had to do was drop this rook down here and start chopping these off. So I thought, why not protect a few of them? This one's protected by my king, and of course it's protecting that one. So I thought, if I just move them just a little bit, then that rook can't get to them anymore. f4 kept us at even. I was supposed to play h6 or g6 here. I did play h6 because, again, I just wanted to get these up here behind my, out of the way of that rook attacking them. h4 was one of my opponent's better moves. h5 was one of the moves that keeps us drawn. As you can see, there's a whole bunch of possibilities for both of us at this point. My opponent played one of their moves, and I played one of mine. So now what do we do? King to g2 is one of my opponent's best moves. I can check them, but then they just get out of check. It doesn't really matter, according to the engine. As long as one of us doesn't just give up something, like if my opponent were to play here and I take their pawn, or if they pushed this and let me take it, something like that, as long as one of us doesn't just start giving up stuff here, we're drawn. Okay, so I made that move, and then I offered my opponent a draw. And thankfully they accepted, because I have a feeling I could have found a way to lose this game, but as far as I knew, all I had to do was just kind of shuffle this rook here. One plan that I thought about, very shortly or briefly considered, was to come over here and try to get this pawn. But this is what I thought. What if I come over here and get this pawn? Like this. Well, if I get the rook there, they're going to move this pawn, right? Okay, well then if I take, and they take, and I take, can I catch that pawn? I didn't think that I could, and no, I couldn't. So that was one reason that I offered the draw here, because I was like, I'm not going to try something silly like that, because they're going to move this pawn. And then if I come back over here to point at it, they're going to drop down and check me and be defending that pawn. And if I were to come forward, then they could drop here protected by the pawn and check me, and then I would probably have to go back, because if I did something else like come down, they would get this pawn. It was pretty clearly drawn, but it all comes back to this position right here where I should have promoted. I would have been up -5 even if I had promoted to a rook. I would have been up -3 if I had promoted to a bishop or a knight. I would have still been up -4 if I had just played knight to c3. So I had at least 5 moves that kept me with a very significant advantage. Now, it does say that if I had promoted to a bishop or a knight, they wouldn't have taken it. It wouldn't have been in their best interest to take, but I would have an extra piece for a pawn. But if I had promoted to a queen or a rook, they would have taken and I would have taken back, and then I would have the extra piece. So yeah, in hindsight, that makes total sense. That was the blunder that kept me from winning this game. Good job once again to my opponent, vedantbaj. As always, if any of you would like to play me on either chess.com or Lichess, my username is Shan_Fry on both sites. I do accept daily unrated challenges on both sites. You pick the amount of days. You can pick 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, whatever, and I will try to make at least 1 move a day, usually more than that, and I'll do my best. And if the game seems interesting, I'll do one of these videos about it. Thank you for spending your time here. I will see you next time.